What's the deal with the Reds? Are we worried about the Reds? Should we be worried about the Reds? Baseball's weird. What's up, everybody? I'm Tara Wellman. This is Birdseeds, and the Cardinals are better than the Cubs. Wait, that can't be true. It's weird that in a week where the Cardinals lost 2 of 3, that actually should have been 4, but rain to the Brewers, and lost 3 of the only 4 outfielders on the roster to injury, that they'd still somehow leapfrog the Cubs in the standings. But here we are. Now, let's not get too crazy. All that really means is that the Cardinals had a pretty solid week, and that the standings are pretty much irrelevant at this point in the season. But don't get me wrong, that's not going to keep me from feeling great about the Yankees beating the Cubs in the longest game of all time. Not really, but you get the point. I think Cardinals fans should also feel pretty good about going from losing 3 outfielders to winning 3 straight in Atlanta. I know it's the Braves, but regardless of the opponent, the Cardinals are once again doing that thing where the next man up steps in and doesn't really miss a beat, which I've been told is super annoying to other fan bases. Sorry, not sorry? I will be curious, though, to see how they move some of these guys around over the next couple of weeks, with Johnny Peralta working his way back from that respiratory infection that was actually mostly about the side effects from the drugs he was taking for the respiratory infection, beside the point. Stephen Piscotty, hopefully coming off of that 10-day DL in 10 actual days, not more. Dexter Fowler still apparently unable to throw, which, rumor has it, is kind of a problem for a center fielder. And the severity of Jose Martinez's injury still to be determined. I can't imagine that Mag Sierra, straight up from A-ball a la Albert Pujols, is going to be sticking around for the long term, but Tommy Pham is a different story, and he certainly made a convincing argument with his play this weekend that he should factor into the longer-term plans for this team. To be perfectly honest, and I know that the Pham fans, say that 10 times fast, will hate me for this, but I don't know that this weekend was necessarily all he needed to do to convince the club that he deserves a more permanent spot. I mean, Tommy Pham is a guy that we've seen have these moments of amazing success. And don't get me wrong, this weekend was amazing. But he often follows that great success with a lot of frustration. I mean, we harp on Kolten Wong for being inconsistent in the field and at the plate, but he's not the only one with that problem. The question really becomes, when these injured players come back, does Tommy Pham even have a spot on this team? I mean, I'd hate for a relatively insignificant injury to be the end of the Jose Martinez story, but that seems to be the most likely chance for Pham. Unless, of course, they decide to stop playing with a short bench in favor of an extra arm, and then you have a spot. At least until you decide to add Peralta back into the equation, and then, well, see what I mean? It's gonna be interesting to watch Damazalek move these pieces around to find the best fit. Now, I did bring up Kolten Wong there briefly, but I'm not gonna talk a lot about him this week because I did last week, and he followed that with a disastrous game. So, sorry about that, buddy. Won't do it again. But I will say this, I think that last week might have been the most significant week in the career of Kolten Wong. Both in how he recovered from a bad game the next day and the rest of the week on the field, and how that bad game and the ensuing questions and commentary and blame of Kolten Wong seemed to have brought something out of his manager that we haven't seen. The defense of Kolten Wong and the building of a relationship there that has been difficult at best. Kolten played this week with more calm, quiet confidence than we've seen from him in a long time, and based on what we saw this week, that works for him. So keep it up, kid. And that's all I'm gonna say. The story this week, other than the fact that the new ballpark in Atlanta is evidently very hitter-friendly, is that the bullpen is still not great. At least not consistently. The bullpen gave up leads in 3 games or so this week and nearly cost the Cardinals the victory in that 14-inning marathon on Sunday to complete the sweep over the Braves. Matt Bowman seems to be crashing back to earth a little bit as he got hit around this week. Brett Cecil had one of his less than stellar weeks, and Sung Won-oh blew a save. Yes, I know the Colton Wong error led to that, but he has not looked unhittable even when there aren't errors made in the field. The point is that we all still kind of hold our collective breath every time the starter turns it over to the bullpen, and that's not really ideal. I will say, though, that Trevor Rosenthal, who finally pitched on back-to-back days this week, has been an absolute delight. It's been interesting watching Mike Matheny handle the roles of Sung Won-oh and Trevor Rosenthal, primarily because in the past he's been so stuck to this perfectly defined role for each one of those guys, and they don't pitch in any other situation. But this year we've seen O as the designated closer, but Rosenthal with some save opportunities. And certainly O's early season struggles played into that, but I don't really hate the idea of this sort of shared closer role for the two of them. I mean, ideally, Rosenthal could be that Andrew Miller hybrid type pitcher who doesn't come into the game based on the inning, but more based on the situation. What part of the order, the seriousness of the moment, being able to come in and put out fires or go 2 innings if necessary. Lots of those things are less defined than the typical standard bullpen roles that Mike Matheny has used in the past. However, that hasn't been the way things have shaped up for Trevor Rosenthal, partly because of his own health and partly because of the needs of this team. The way that it sets up now, this gives Mike Matheny a really unique opportunity to use the guy that's best suited for any particular scenario, whether it's one guy's more rested than the other, or because it's a part of the order that makes more sense for one pitcher over the other. I mean, these are 2 guys that have very different pitching profiles, if you will. Trevor Rosenthal is a fireballer by all accounts. I mean, he hit 102 on the radar gun this year, which is harder than I've ever seen him throw. But he also comes armed with a pretty great breaking ball and a changeup that will blow your mind. I mean, he has the velocity of a reliever and the arsenal of a starter, and that's a pretty deadly combo when you can get it in these small, compact appearances like a reliever is given. But then there's Sung Won-oh, and I'm gonna make a comparison here, but please understand, I'm not comparing apples to apples. I'm just saying the method is similar between a guy like O and someone like Mariano Rivera. Again, not comparing the two directly, just saying that O's not really surprising anyone more often than not. He comes into the game and you know what you're gonna get, but he's successful when he can be exact and when he hits his spots, not necessarily because he's gonna blow something by the hitters. But having 2 guys like that, who have experience as a closer but also in other roles in a bullpen, who are so different, could be a really effective tool for Mike Matheny if he uses it appropriately, which is always the question. I don't know, what do you think? Is one of these guys the ideal closer and the other the setup man, or is there room for Mike Matheny to mix and match a little bit to get the best out of both of them on any given day? Let me know in the comments below, or just tweet me. Let me know what you think. It's weird, you know, the Cardinals are 13-5 since that opening road trip of the year. I mean, that's actually pretty good, but I feel like Cardinals fans as a whole are a little hesitant to buy into this idea that the Cardinals might not actually be terrible because the first 2 weeks were so rough. And yet, here they are, right back in the mix in the National League Central. I mean, sure, the Cubs are not playing up to expectation, and the Reds, I would say, are exceeding expectations at this point. But the Cardinals have given themselves the opportunity to sort of rewrite their expectations. And maybe that's why we feel, or at least I feel, like we're still a little unsure of what we can realistically expect. But we'll soon find out. The Cardinals wrap up the road trip with a series against the Marlins and then come on back home to meet up with the Cubs at Busch Stadium. I don't know about you, but I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. I'm Tara Wellman, and I'll see you next time on Birdseeds.